Hi, my name is Ashley and I'm a mom of 2 little girls. I have a 3-year-old named Kylie and I also have a 12-month-old named Mia. So I think it goes without saying that most parents are pretty well aware that spending time outdoors with your children is incredibly beneficial for them. And while it is true that any amount of time at all that you're spending outdoors with your little ones is going to be good for them, I want to challenge you to think about the quality of the time that you're spending outdoors with your child. What exactly are you doing with that time? The reason I bring this up is because outdoor organized sports activities, family days, group trips, things like that, while those are definitely a great boon to your child's development, there is another way that you can spend outdoor time with your child every single day that is super simple but also incredibly impactful. So from one busy parent to another, today I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit about how to take a child's walk from a Montessori perspective. So the first thing that we need to look at is just assessing for a moment what your normal, typical, average daily walk looks like with your child, if you are able to take walks every single day. I know some people live in much closer quarters where perhaps walking about every single day is not quite an option, but if you are spending any time at all outdoors with your child, I want you to just think for a second what that looks like. If you are able to take walks with your child, what is it that you're doing on the walks? And I would venture to guess that what this looks like for most families is that once you finally have your child out the door, if they're not walking next to you, then they're probably in a stroller so that you can go at a nice brisk pace. Perhaps you're getting in some of your own daily exercise at the same time. If you're lucky enough to live near some open space, perhaps you are taking them to an open space, but it might just be a residential neighborhood and there's nothing wrong with that. But you are walking at what could be considered an adult pace with your child. You might stop to point out a neighborhood dog or some squirrel that you see in a yard, or like I said, if you are in open space, maybe you see a bird or something a little more exotic than a pet. But your goal is to accomplish the walk, get around the block or around the trail or to one end and back, whatever your goal is, you have a goal, and that's kind of what you've got your mind on throughout the time. And while some of you might be listening to music or podcasts while you're walking, some of you might be carrying on small conversations with your child as you're walking. For most people, I think you're probably also thinking about all of the other things that are going on in your daily life, all of the things that you have accomplished in the last day or a couple of days, things that are on your to-do list that you need to get done, perhaps once you get back home or later that week. As adults, that's typically where our brains tend to go. We're constantly living in either the past or the future. So you get through your walk with your child, you're already telling them before you even get home, okay, when we get back, we're gonna have lunch, etc., whatever the plan might be. And then that's it. You check it off your list, you've gotten your walk accomplished for the day, and you can move on with the rest of your schedule. So in this scenario that we just described, I do want to say that I don't think there is anything wrong with that, because like I said earlier, any amount of time that you're getting outside with your child is going to be good for them. However, I would like to challenge you for just a moment to really take a step back and consider what benefits you're hoping for your child to gain from having this time spent outside throughout their childhood. I would think that most parents would agree that aside from some of the obvious benefits, like being outside is good for your physical health, because not only are you getting some exercise, but you're just outdoors kind of enjoying nature, soaking up some vitamin D, and also it being good for your emotional health as well. I'm inclined to say that in addition to those things, a lot of parents would also add on things like your child gaining a general sense of appreciation for nature and appreciating the beauty of nature, and hopefully eventually encouraging a little bit of environmental stewardship just in their general character, so that when they do grow up and go out into the world as adults, that they have this sense of responsibility, that they are going to do their part to take care of the environment for future generations. So if anything that I've been saying up to this point is resonating with you as a parent, I would highly encourage you to change the format of your walk with your child, perhaps not every day, but at least on occasion, sometimes, and try a Montessori child's walk instead. Because as we're about to discuss, not only is your child going to gain all of the benefits that we've already discussed from doing a walk in this style, there are also a host of other developmental benefits that your child is going to see much more immediately. Things like a plethora of opportunities for sensory exploration, as as well as a really big boon to their gross motor skills, as well as their fine motor skills, not to mention things like creativity and problem solving and independence and confidence. So how does one conduct a Montessori child's walk properly? The first thing that you need to always keep in the back of your mind and wrap your head around this is that it's about the child. That's why it's called a child's walk. Remember earlier I discussed the fact that as an adult, our goal is always on the end product, finishing the walk, getting the exercise time in, making it home for lunch on time. We're always thinking ahead to the goal. Whereas for a child, for them, it's about the process. It's about the journey. It's about the walk itself. They could care less about getting home on time for lunch. So if you can try to reframe where your mind is during the walk and try to be more present in the moment with your child, you're going to enjoy it so much more. So this means that you need to take the walk at your child's pace, which for some adults can be agonizingly slow. But again, remember, it is their walk, not yours. So slow your pace down to theirs. Let them kind of take the lead and direct how fast it is that you're going and where you're stopping, which we'll talk about more in just a minute. But try not to hurry them along. Try to get out of that parental mindset of, come on, let's go, let's keep going. We still have X number of minutes to cover before we need to be home for lunch. Just leave all of that at home and go at their pace. And I say this within reason because there are definitely going to be circumstances where you do need to gently guide your child along so that they continue the walk, because some children will definitely become very absorbed in one particular thing that they've found on the side of the trail or the side of the road, and you might end up there for the next hour if it were totally up to them. Whereas you do need to complete the walk at some point. So within reason, try not to hurry them along. Next, try not to be distracted yourself. Try to be in the moment with your child. Observe, explore with them. If they've bent down to look at a tiny little ant on the sidewalk, then you can bend down with them and have a little conversation about what it is that they're looking at, and really, like I said, be in the moment with them. Try not to be following behind them just on your phone, doing what adults normally do and letting them have all of the time to themselves without any interaction on your part. And on the flip side of that, that's not to say that you should be hovering over them and commenting on every single little thing that they're doing, almost narrating the entire walk. That's definitely unnecessary and a little bit overboard, but you do want to strike a balance between interacting with them and then at times when they do seem very absorbed in what they're doing and they're not actively seeking your engagement, maybe just taking a step back during those times and letting them independently explore. Something else that you can do during the child's walk is to point out details for them, because you have to remember they are very young, so they might pass right by something that they might have not stopped to consider because they just don't have the life experience yet to be thinking about some of those things. So for example, you might be walking along and notice that there's a little pile of snow left on the ground with a little bit of green leaves or grass poking up through the bottom of it. And you might just casually point out to your child as you're walking, oh look, it looks like there's a little bit of green grass poking through. That's how you know spring is coming. Or if it's a partly cloudy day and the sun has suddenly gone behind a cloud and it's not quite as bright as it was, you might comment on that and be like, oh, it got a little bit darker. I think the sun just went behind a cloud. Or if you happen to see something really interesting on the walk that your child looks as if they're about to walk right by, then you might draw their attention to it. Perhaps it's a really pretty flower and it's got a lot of different bright colors on it that you can only see once you're really up close. So you might call your child over and say something like, hey, did you see this really cool flower? Look, it's got pink and purple and oh look, there's yellow right there, and really draw their eyes into some of those details. As I said earlier, you're not doing this the entire time that you're walking with your child. But on occasion, it is nice to do these things because they're learning. And eventually what you're going to notice is that your child is going to begin investigating things just a little bit closer, the way that you've been doing with them, all on their own. And sometimes you might just be able to observe them doing that and they won't make any comment to you about it. And other times they'll call your attention over and say, hey mom or hey dad, come look what I found. It's just a simple and easy way as a parent on these walks that you can help your child to hone their own observation skills. utensils. Next, you might want to consider bringing a small bucket or a bag or some type of a container with you, because young children love to collect things from nature. It might be a little small pebble or an interesting leaf that they found or an acorn, but they do love to collect things that they find, and sometimes they want to take them home with them. And so if you have a little container to put some of these little treasures that they find into, then you can pack them up and safely take them home in one piece. Not that it gets all crunched up in your pocket on the way. You should put a limit though on how many things that they are collecting, and maybe not collect stuff every single time. And you can explain to your child that the reason that we don't collect every single time is because if everyone was doing that on their daily walk, eventually there would be nothing left for anyone else to see and enjoy. So something that you can do as an alternative if you don't want to collect anything, or if perhaps your child wants to collect and they're having a hard time with the idea of not taking something home with them, I would say that most people probably have a cell phone handy on them anyway for emergency purposes, just in case something were to go wrong. So you could always take out your phone real quick and snap a photo of whatever the little treasure is that they are asking to take home. Something else to consider for your child's walk is varying the type of terrain that you're covering during some of these walks. Now, as I said earlier, I know that some folks are not able to get out into outdoor open space very often, sometimes not at all, and that's okay. If your daily walk is just on a paved sidewalk around a neighborhood that has a very sparse amount of nature, but at least some to be explored, then that's fine. But if you do have the fortunate ability to be able to get out with your child into more outdoor open space, then consider maybe taking your walk on a trail in the woods someday, or maybe look up a small creek that's nearby where you live and take them along the edge of the creek. Or if you do happen to live coastally, perhaps you can take your walk over at the beach someday, along the shoreline or along the sand dunes on the other side. Having experience with all of these different types of terrain is incredible for their gross motor development, because they have to learn how to balance themselves differently. They might have to go uphill or downhill. There might be obstacles in the way that they weren't planning on, like a log that has fallen across a path in the middle of the woods that they then have to climb over. There's a lot of different possibilities when you're exploring different types of terrain. So if you have the ability to do that, then I would encourage you to not just stick to the same path every single time. On occasion, switch it up. Now, when it comes to the weather, there is a very popular saying in Montessori that is, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. And this is definitely true to an extent depending on where you live. If the weather is cold, then there's nothing wrong with still taking your walk as long as your child is in layers and an appropriate type of jacket to keep them warm. If it is snowing, then make sure they have on a snowsuit and snow boots. If it is raining, then perhaps you guys just take a shorter walk with a raincoat and an umbrella. Now, if you are facing sub-zero temperatures where it is just bitter and miserable outside, then perhaps you might decide to skip your walk that day. The point is that you don't want to limit your child's walks to only the days that you have nice weather. I think it's actually incredibly beneficial for your child to be able to experience a little bit of inclement weather, to feel raindrops on their face, to feel wind going through their hair at a much more brisk pace than perhaps they're used to. And personally, my family, we live in a place where it does snow a majority of the year, so getting out into the snow is just another day for us, and my children love to play in the snow. So be open-minded about the weather and dress your child accordingly, which brings me to my next point. Make sure that whatever you're dressing them in is something that you don't mind them getting dirty in. Let's just say that for a child's walk, it's probably not a good idea to put them in one of their nicer outfits. It might be a better idea to perhaps reserve an outfit or two that they wear exclusively on these child walks. This way, no matter how wet or dirty they get, you are able to resist the temptation to say, oh no, don't do that, because you're afraid of them getting dirty. Children have an innate desire to get down and dirty with nature. They want to dig their fingernails into the mud. They want to squish mud between their fingers and toes. And they definitely want to go stomping in that giant puddle that you are about to walk by. And if you are constantly there telling them no, 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 no the entire time, just because you don't want their outfit getting dirty, it's definitely going to ruin the mood a little bit on the child's walk. You want to encourage encourage them to explore to their heart's content on these walks. So dress them accordingly. Now, when it comes to safety, obviously this is top of your priority list. You do not want your child putting themselves in a situation where they could potentially become very seriously injured. Today's parents, we are surrounded almost by too much information, and it causes us to be a lot more nervous about things than perhaps our own parents were. I would venture to guess that many of you have at least one story from when you were a child that you were outdoors getting dirty, doing something slightly dangerous. Perhaps your parents didn't even know about it. You were there at one point and you survived. So within reason, I urge you to try not to micromanage every single thing that your child is doing during this walk. Really step back and give them a little bit of space to explore without you hovering over their shoulder telling them to be careful every 5 seconds. I personally always try to remember that bumps, bruises, and scrapes on the knee are par for the course in childhood. So I really try to not hover and give my girls space to do what they need to do. And if some of those things happen to occur, then it is what it is. Something that you can do as a parent that would probably help to ease your mind and also make sure that your child is not going to gravely injure themselves along this walk is to spot them. So for example, if you see your child is about to climb over something or climb up onto something and you know that they're not a very experienced climber yet, or perhaps they're still a little bit wobbly when it comes to balance while they're climbing, things like that. If you see something like that about to happen, then I would encourage you to go spot your child, be ready just in case they should take a spill to catch them, but otherwise don't keep your hands directly on them the entire time. Keep your hands just a few inches away so that you're ready, but otherwise they're doing it on their own, because that is how they're going to gain confidence. And depending on where you are taking the child's walk, these situations are going to pop up inevitably at some point. You have to remember that young children will almost always take the more challenging route if given a choice. So for example, if you are walking through the woods and your child has the opportunity to climb over a giant algae moss covered log versus going in the tiny little space right around it where the path is totally clear, I will give you one guess which way your child is going to choose to go. And if you guessed over the log, then you would be absolutely right. It's not that your child is trying to be a daredevil or trying to give you a heart attack. It's because young children have this desire, this urge to constantly challenge themselves, especially when it comes to the development of physical skills. So they always try to challenge themselves by taking the hardest, most difficult path possible whenever they see that choice laying before them. And it's just something that as a parent, if you are going to be doing these child's walks, you have to come to expect. And once you can expect these things, then you can be ready to spot them and be there for them just in case, but otherwise let them have that opportunity. With all that said, again, safety is of course always your #1 priority when you are taking your child outdoors. So if your child is about to do something to very gravely injure themselves and you can see it coming before it happens and are able to prevent it, or if they are about to go touch a dangerous animal like a snake that happens to be on the path, or if they're going to touch a dead animal or something that might contain pathogens, of course you should step in as a parent and prevent your child from doing these things. But within reason, if you can give them the space and the freedom, it is going to benefit your child so much more. And finally, the last thing I want to mention, because I know some of you are thinking of it already, is when do you start these child's walks with your young child? And the answer to that is as soon as they are walking. Young children can reasonably be expected to walk without any issues for about 1 mile for every year of their age. And I know that might sound like a lot to you as a parent, but you have to remember that young children have boundless amounts of energy, and as long as you're there to guide them, they would be happy to explore nature all day if you let them. If you have a baby who is not walking yet, you can still take them outside and get them accustomed to spending time outdoors and almost setting the stage for these child's walks. But as soon as they start walking, you want to get them up and take them out for these walks as often as you can. If they are starting out at that young of an age, then they are going to be much more capable of taking longer walks by the time they are toddlers and preschoolers without any issues. And if you have an older toddler or preschooler, or maybe even an older child that you're looking to do some of these child's walks with, I would not jump in right away to saying, okay, you're 4 years old, so we're gonna go walk 4 miles today. That might be a little bit too much for them to handle in the beginning if they have never done any of these types of walks before in the past. So definitely ease them into it if this is something that is new for them. But once they become accustomed to doing it, I think you would be pleasantly surprised to know that eventually they will be able to cover that type of a distance. And if you are planning to do a longer distance child's walk with a slightly older child, or perhaps your walk is just a little bit further from home where you don't have the convenience of being able to get home right away if you need to, then it would be a good idea to pack water, perhaps a couple of snacks, a blanket. This way, partway through your walk, you and your child can sit down and recharge your batteries a little bit before you expect your child to get up and finish the walk with you. So I hope this video has allowed you to gain a new perspective on the possibilities that there are when it comes to taking your child out on a Montessori child's walk to really help them gain the most from it each and every single time you go. And if you have any of your own tips and advice to add to what we've discussed in this video today, then please be sure to share them with us in the comments down below. If you liked today's video, then please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. And just in case you are new to my channel, I did want to let you know that this video is part of a much larger series called Montessori at Home, which is aimed at providing practical tips and advice for busy parents like you and I for implementing Montessori philosophies at home with your children. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in learning more about, then you might consider subscribing to my channel. This way you don't miss a new video, because I do upload a new one just like this one every single week. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.